are getting into what we have seen in the first part is we were looking at research and we were identifying some of the problematic areas about research, and Dr. Walid was talking to you about expanding the topic, reading for your topic, how to read more closely for your topic, how to combine your approach with your corpus, and so on. This is all has to do with the research, which is the first component of the presentation. The second component is proposal. So this is what we are getting into for this session and tomorrow, at least the first session of tomorrow's workshop. A proposal, before we start actually looking at the elements of a proposal, we want to be reminded of a few things about writing a proposal. We have done the research that is presumably enough to get us to the stage of writing a proposal. So what to keep in mind while we get into this second step of actually writing the proposal? We have to remember what we said at the beginning, is that this is a way of introducing my ideas to others. It's not something between myself and myself. Okay? There is an audience that I'm addressing. It's not something I'm doing to learn only, but I'm doing it to convince others, to show others that I have something to say, So there is a presentation that is required. So one of the things we keep in mind is that it's not simply a formal matter to write a proposal. We are not simply filling out a format. We are doing that, but we are doing it because we have an argument and we want to put forward our argument. It's not just something mechanical that we are filling out, objective is this, research questions is this. There is a logic behind every element that we are required to include in the proposal. So sometimes it seems like routine stuff, like we're doing it to please الدراسات العليا, or we're doing it to please مجلس القسم. Partly yes, but there is also a logic behind it, and the more we are able to keep the meaning, المقصد زي مقاصد الشريعة كده، المقصد يعني أنا مش بصلي بس عشان بصلي في حاجة ورا الصلاة يعني. So we keep the maqsid behind, even though we are filling a formality. I also want to remind you of something that Dr. Walid said at the beginning, that a well-written proposal, a well-thought-out proposal takes you a long way on the road to writing your dissertation. So it's something that actually needs to be given a lot of care and to be done thoroughly and with sort of scheme in mind, so that we come up with a good, well-researched, well-written proposal. This crystallizes things in our heads, and it makes the process of writing the thesis smoother if you have a good proposal, and vice versa. If you have a clumsy, hastily written proposal, then usually you spend a lot of time to start on your thesis, to start writing it. So the time you invest in writing the proposal is not time lost. It actually works towards your thesis. We have like booklet coming from الدراسات العليا. Of course, here we're talking about requirements of our school, our department, our faculty. So there is this paper that gives you all the elements. You can get it من مكتب الدراسات العليا, and then there is a booklet that explains the elements, and they are both available. حتى مش لازم تروح الدراسات العليا، دول موجودين عند سكرتيرة القسم عند مدام معنا. So you have this, which is just one paper, and you have the explanation. And we are going to go one by one. So basically, these are the elements. We have 15 elements. Important to keep in mind is that when we start writing a proposal, of course we have to remember that we have done this process of research that we talked about in the previous session. What we need to be doing is to keep in mind that we don't start writing the proposal by starting element by element. The whole proposal has to be in my mind. Okay? يعني مش لسه هبدأ أقول إيه الأوبجيكتيف بتاعي so I write the part of the objective وأنا مش عارفة ولو vaguely إيه research questions بتاعتي. يعني I have to think about all the elements of the proposal. I have to have an idea about them, and then I start writing element by element. Okay? لأنه الelements بترد على بعضها. And they derive from each other. So ما لاقيش نفسي الله طب ما انا قلت الكلام ده في الايمز ده انا محتاجاه في الكويستشنز طب انا قلته ليه في الايمز طب ده انا كده اتلخبطت. So I have to have like a skeleton, the structure in my mind of the whole proposal, and then I start writing element by element. The other thing is that, okay, I have everything in my mind, but I am presenting it to an audience. And to present it to an audience, I need to be interesting. I need to involve the audience. This is an art, you know, it's like you are advertising something, you're writing a commercial or something. So I am not revealing everything from the beginning to the reader. Right? يعني لما يجي وقت الريسيرش questions هقول الريسيرش questions. لما يجي وقت الobjectives هقول الobjectives. لكن وانا بكتب في الانترودكشن مش لازم اتكلم in detail على الobjectives واقول كل اللي عندي على الobjectives في الانترودكشن. طب هقول ايه بعد كده؟ اوكي؟ الريسيرش question اللي هو ليه علاقه بالليه الريسيرش ده important وايه الكونتريبيوشن اللي انا هعمله ما اقولهاش في الانترودكشن. Right? علشان I have to keep my ideas gradually revealed to the reader, not to put everything from the very beginning لأن بعد كده كله هيبان إنه repetition. Right? So there is this art of teasing the reader a little bit and not giving all the information from the beginning, but given also the right amount of information, and this we'll learn as we go element by element. The third thing to have in mind is that I have to start, I don't start writing my proposal unless I am fairly comfortable with my topic. يعني what, why, or how. Okay? مش لازم أكون متأكدة قوي أنا هعمل إيه. يعني not everything is clear, but I have a fairly comfortable idea about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how I'm doing it. Because if I don't have that, I will get lost a lot during the writing process. Okay? ومش لازم أبقى خلاص بقيت an expert in all of these. But I can tell people, I can tell my cousin, you know, I'm writing something on eco-criticism because it's like this. So it's something that you can explain to someone else. Not in detail, but at least you have the answers to the three questions ready in your mind. So don't start writing, don't jump to writing before you have become comfortable with these three. Comfortable, not fully knowledgeable, comfortable. Okay, as we go through I told you there are 15 elements. Some of these elements are just formal elements that we won't go through. زي صفحة العنوان، خلاص صفحة العنوان عندكم فورمات والفونت شكله ايه that you will do that. صفحة التصويبات الإراسة. So I mean these are things that okay you already you don't need. So we have title page. What is written in sort of orange color is something we're not going to deal with here. You are required to do it, but we're not going to talk about it. Title page, the errata. Then there is the abstract. This is the first element that is of importance to us here. We will talk about it. Table of contents, list of technical terms اللي هي في المصطلحات. في لازم دي على فكرة دي مطلوبة ولازم نعملها حتى لو ما خدناش فيها حاجة. لازم يبقى في صفحة اسمها قائمة المصطلحات. طبعا in the Arabic version you will find the Arabic equivalent of these things. يعني table of contents, صفحة المحتويات as discussed, and then تمهيد الدراسة. So I mean, here we're going to focus on the abstract. So we have these are 5 out of the 15 elements, and then we have introduction, problem and importance of the research, aims and objectives, research questions. Then we have hypotheses. دي برضو موجودة في elements بس as literature researchers we don't need to have hypotheses. So we drop out the hypotheses. I don't know about linguistics. I think it's required in linguistics. So I don't want to get into that because I mean you have to ask your supervisor if you're doing linguistics about the hypotheses. طبعا موجودة في حاجات تانية. دي حاجة عامة للكلية كلها. ففي علم نفس بيعملوا experiments and so on. بيبقى فيه hypotheses. إن المريض يستجيب لمش عارف إيه لما بياخد إيه. Okay. بس for us we don't want the hypotheses. The last set of elements, scope of the research, methodology, literature review, tentative chapterization, and bibliography. And they are very strict here in the الدراسات العليا about the order. So please follow the order. Yes. Sure.
She got something about the order and the elements change. So you have to inform yourself by going to مكتب الدراسات العليا and getting the latest format. يعني when I look at this format, this is not the format that I used to write my PhD proposal in 2002. I mean, they changed, so you have to keep up with it.
Yeah.
But is this the final one, or
this is the most recent version? This is the most recent version. Yeah. So yes, you have to keep checking if there are changes. Yes.
So this order conflicts with the nature of my research, and actually it does not follow the order of most proposals. I mean, the format for proposals is other universities.
Yeah. You will have to stick to it because this is required by our school, and it has your proposal goes through. يعني في مجلس القسم we are not very strict about this, but when it goes to لجنة الدراسات العليا they are very strict about it. Yes, I have been working in لجنة الدراسات العليا for 2 years. So we get the proposals after they pass from the departments of all the faculty. I mean, all the departments in the faculty. There is, if you're working with a foreign language, if you're working with English, you're writing your proposal in English or French, you're required to write an Arabic mini proposal. So إحنا في القسم we are not very strict about the order, and sometimes you can drop out maybe something if it's not fitting. But when the Arabic summary of the proposal, which is a small proposal, goes to اللجنة بتاعتنا, I don't mind, but اللجنة in general are very strict. They don't sometimes just don't read what you have written. They look at the order and let the audit and literature review قبل الobjectives. رجعوا هنا. It's the other way around. You can play with the order.
Yes, I mean I can substitute.
I don't know. Are you flexible?
I think what we're more flexible about is whether something fits or it doesn't fit. Like, for example, the hypothesis. Or, I mean, sometimes the second category doesn't apply because you explain it elsewhere, so you don't want to discuss. Because I think there's no need to tamper with the order if you're going to include the content. See what I'm saying?
يعني for example I know that in linguistics انتوا بتعملوا chapter على literature review ولا انا فاهمه؟ يبقى في chapter على بس ده في الثيسس. اوكي؟ لكن في البروبوزل انت مش لازم تحطي literature review في الاول حتى لو هو هيجي في الاول في الثيسس بتاعك. Well, let's say we will have to stick to that unless we have a sort of تطمين من المشرف بتاعنا in yes you can do that and we will defend it in the department's council. Otherwise, or there is good grounds for doing it that way. Otherwise, stick to the order, I would say. And in the Arabic, I would say stick to the order because this goes to لجنة ملهاش علاقة بالتخصصات. Lagna that reads for everything, so they read more superficially. Okay, right. One more thing to keep in mind just before we look into the elements of the proposal is that, as we said before, it tends to be repetitive sometimes. يعني أحيانا ألاقي questions of the research, aims of the research, they look a little bit close. Sometimes they overlap, they do overlap, يعني ما هماش حاجات clear cut برضه يعني، بس احنا بنحاول نخليهم clear cut for the purpose of the presentation, of presenting it to an audience, of writing a proposal. But that's why it's sometimes a difficult job. But in the end, they are overlapping. So what matters or what can help me is to keep يعني أنا بدأت أكتب aims and objectives كل جملة أكتبها I have to have aims and objectives in my mind. Now I'm writing aims and objectives. لأن بعد شوية هلاقي نفسي كل جملة تاخدني الجملة بعدها وأدخل في importance of the research من غير ما أخد بالي. So each sentence I write, after I finish writing, I evaluate. According to what my label here is. It's the aims. Does this fit the aims or not? Have I gone out of the aims to something else or not? Every single sentence has to be evaluated. And by the way, your proposal does not have to be long. You don't have to write and write and write and write. You are responding to these elements. If you respond adequately to these elements, then you have written your proposal. Yet you don't have to elaborate unnecessarily because this will lead to confusion. I have just looked at the proposal from the Chinese department 2 days ago because we had this meeting of the and we had a very nice proposal coming from the Chinese department. They write in Arabic, of course, even the dissertation they write it in Arabic, not in Arabic or English, but not in Chinese. So it was, I think, each one of these elements was one paragraph. And it looked adequate, I understood what it was about, and it was actually an interesting topic, you know. But he was to the point. He was, you know, giving the reader what needs to be given. As I told you, we will look at these elements one by one. Of course, we have excluded 5 elements that are not important for us. 1, 2, 4, 5, and 10 that we are not going to deal with. So we have 10 elements to work with, and we will, I and Dr. Walid will be discussing these elements with you, and to make things more familiar, to concretize things better, we have come up with a topic, you know, that we will always be referring to our imaginary topic, so which shows this topic, which is a commonplace topic that no one would like to work on because it has been done like 1,000 times. But this is something that is apart and more. Season of migration to the north as post-colonial counter-discourses, a comparative study. This is our reference point. For every element, we will link the element to this as a way of, applying what we are saying.
I have a question about one of the elements that we're going to exclude, which is the list of technical terms, because actually I'm writing my proposal how I've never, I left it out. I never put anything about it. So what is the list of technical terms? Because I really, maybe later if you want to, because I really don't know what it is.
Technical terms. It's when you use a certain term in a special sort of sense. I mean, in certain disciplines, in certain methodologies, words do not mean what they normally mean. Like if you go to Derrida's difference with an A or with an E, you have to explain. I'm using this here according to this meaning or this definition of the term. And sometimes you use certain terms I hadn't thought about this earlier, so I'm just providing that if you can also contribute to this discussion. Sometimes you take a term that means something normally, but you're using it in a special sense. Or a term that has been used in different, take the term discourse. Now when you talk about discourse, it means something in normal everyday English. It means another in Foucault's sense of the word. So you have to specify that I'm using it here in Foucault's sense of the word, which means kada.
And do I have to have this element in my proposal?
Maybe we don't insist on it very much within the department, but for the Arabic summary, you will have to.
So I have to make a new proposal for the Arabic
you have to check with your supervisor first if the department, because again the department also changes the criteria sometimes. So sometimes we get, there is a problem about it, so we decide using terminology from everybody. So you have to check beforehand. But at the department we are not very strict about the form. So even if it's missing, nobody is going to dismiss your proposal for that. They would ask you to add it. This won't be a serious problem with your proposal. But it will be a serious problem for the Walid. You'll have to have, we return it. They return it, but I have to say yes because I'm a minority. But you have to, they're very strict about it. So with the Arabic, don't tamper with the required fields and with the arrangement. One more thing, you don't have to explain every single term you use. Within the proposal, you explain the key terms in your topic, okay, in your title. So, you're going to refer to 101 technical terms while you write. But into your topic, we all the discourse of identity in post-colonial narratives of معرفش ايه. يبقى ساعتها هتقول ايه discourse ايه identity, because cultural identity ايه cultural identity, national identity ايه national identity, okay, the loss of identity ايه the loss of identity. So key terms, but not every term that you use.
Especially terms that we're bringing on, like when Dr. Randa is actually she's mapping this study, I'm thinking narratology. If you use the term narratology, what's it mean? And you have to explain the theory behind it, and this use of a specific context means specifically inside. Now, over the coming few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about the abstract, rather not talk to you about the abstract, to explain this, and the introduction. Before I do this, a couple of points I want to add to what Dr. Randa has said already. Very, very general considerations, and they just came through my mind as I was listening to her. It's extremely important to take some distance from your proposal and read it again later on. Edit it, just with the labels in mind. It's even more important that you give it to some reader to look at. Of course, you have an advisor, but you and your advisor may be too immersed in what you're doing. I want you to remember that what is clear in your mind is not necessarily clear to your reader. And it may be clear in your mind and in your advisor's mind, because you both discussed it, because you've had an ongoing conversation, because you've written something about it, because you've edited things out. It doesn't mean that a reader will read and understand. So one way of testing this is to give it to someone to read. Just tell you if it makes sense. Of course, I would chop up a proposal after it's written. Just read the objective and see if this is actually an objective. Read the questions of the research and see if they are questions and they fit the criteria or not. I want to remind you of two things very, very generally that you can make a tedious formality work for you. You know, it is a tedious formality. It is a requirement that we have to fulfill. It is something we cannot jump over. But you can make it work for you. I mean, and this relates to what Dr. Randa has said, that you have to have the entire proposal. You have to have a vision in your mind. You know? Now, you're going to divide that into sections and parts for the proposal, but thinking it out will help you do the research. Also, the step-by-step process is important because you avoid overlap. I mean, as we were preparing this workshop, we were looking at certain material, at proposals, and we could not sometimes decide if this was aim or objective. And of course, aim and objective are very, they're very, very similar terms. I mean, there's a very fine line. The step-by-step process puts things in order for you, So it's you have to have your vision, you have to think of label and process. Now, basically, what I want to talk to you about is the introduction. The abstract is very important. It comes at the very beginning, but we'll not discuss it now. We will discuss it at the end of this session when we've gone through the elements, because it's really like a summary. Just very, very briefly.
Yeah, you write the abstract at the end. So you start with the recipes first.
I mean, it hinders you if you write the abstract. I mean, remember that the abstract is an abstract. It's a summary. So you're summarizing what you've already written. You're taking the very basic skeleton of your proposal and you're turning it into an abstract, a short summary, which is like what, 150 words, right? You cannot do that in the beginning. You have to do it in the end when you have a vision of the entire proposal. So we'll talk about this later. What I want to talk to you about is the introduction. And I want you to tell me now, the introduction is essentially the first thing that someone reads in your proposal. They look at the abstract. A lot of people don't read the abstract because they want to read the proposal itself. In a lot of journals you find an abstract in the beginning. It basically guides your reader to decide whether or not they're interested in that article. For example, if I'm doing research, I can go and read the abstract instead of reading an entire article and then decide whether it's of interest enough to me or not at all. Now, this is not the setup here. The abstract summarizes what I'm going to see in the proposal, and as a reader, I may choose to skip the abstract. So in reality, the first thing I see is your introduction. Now, bearing this in mind, what do you want the introduction to be? What do you think a reader expects to see in your introduction?
An introduction has general information that at the same time pertains to the topic.
So it has to be pertinent, and it has to be general. Okay? Any other suggestions?
And the major risks of the argument.
You want to include the major threads of the argument in your introduction. What else?
Background information.
Background information. What is the effect you want to have on your reader?
Has the effect introduction has to be catchy, has to make you want to read the rest of the proposal or the research.
Well, let me basically disappoint you. No, you don't want to have too much background in the introduction. And you don't actually want to present the argument in the introduction. Remember, you don't want to preempt yourself. Remember, Dr. Randa was saying you're revealing bit by bit. You know, you have this entire picture and you are uncovering a bit. You know, I mean, here is, I have the entire proposal, I have the entire project in my mind, but I'm not giving it to you at one go, and I want you to continue to read. So you're leading your reader on bit by bit, so that they read the next chapter, the next section. So they read the introduction, and you leave them with a sense, I want to continue. Because an introduction has to be interesting. And it has to be, of course, relevant, of course, pertinent, of course, everything. But it has to be interesting. It has to be short. It has to be concentrated. How long should your introduction be?
A couple of pages, maybe. Just one.
One paragraph. It can be one long paragraph. But why should it be more than one paragraph? You're basically introducing your topic.
You're not getting into the topic.
Right? And you want to remember that you're not getting into the topic, because there is a place in the proposal where you will actually have to get into the topic. In the introduction, you don't want to get you don't want to get into the topic, because later on, when you actually get into the topic, it becomes repetitive if you've already said it in the introduction. You don't want to explain your methodology, because later on there is a section for methodology, and then it becomes déjà vu. You know, why are we saying this again? You've already said that before, and these are comments that surface in discussions of proposals. So, what I want to do is give a very basic introduction to what I'm writing about. I mean, let's take this topic, Things Fall Apart and Season of Migration to the North, as post-colonial counter-discourse. And this is a comparative study. Basically, in my introduction, I would put information that is very, very, very basic and general about these two texts. I want to captivate my reader. How do you do that?
I would say that they were groundbreaking texts. They subverted a lot of colonial notions.
Okay, Season of Migration to the North and Things Fall Apart are two African texts. Interesting or not interesting? When asked about the composition of, when asked about writing of Season of Migration to the North, Chinua Achebe said that at the time, said that at the time he was going through this personal crisis that led him to write about, etc., etc. More interesting or less interesting?
More
What's the
interesting.
difference?
There's a sense of suspense too. We don't know what's the personal crisis.
So
We want to
suspense,
read more.
anecdotal. You know, you can start with something anecdotal. You can start with a quotation from someone. You can actually start with a counter quotation that these two texts have always been seen as, but here I'm looking at them as, or although many people think of Shakespeare as, Shakespeare can also be seen as something else. You know, this sort of dialogue in the introduction always keeps your reader interested. You know, an anecdote, an incident, something, a quotation, previous research but done in an interesting way. All of these are ways to open up the conversation. And remember, in the introduction, you are not required to go beyond introducing your topic. This is what I'm going to work with. And if we go back to the 3 questions that we asked earlier, the question that is relevant here
Is what?
exactly what I am working. Not yet why, not yet how. Why would be the explanation of my aim. How would be my methodology, like the chapterization, etc., etc. But now you're choosing a relevant quotation and argument, counter-argument, something anecdotal, something very general, something historical. I basically want to get my reader interested. And do not be afraid of experimenting in the introduction. Okay? So don't, yes, I would discourage you from experimenting very much when you're doing the exposition of your methodology. I would discourage you from experimenting with the questions of the research. Because here you want to follow a specific format, it has to be very, there are academic criteria, there is a requirement, and we're trying to fulfill that requirement and adhere to those criteria. In the introduction, it's your space, right? Do I give historical background related to my corpus? Do I give technical details?
No.
Certainly not. So anything that is very, very specific, anything that will reveal how you're going to research these 2 novels, you don't want to put it in the introduction. And if you put it in the introduction, you don't want to put it anywhere else. And if you don't put it anywhere else, it's about your proposal. So what you do, you not put it in the introduction. Right? Now, I'll come back later, but Dr. Randa will be talking to you more now about problems and aims.
There was a question here.
Yes.
No. That's the good thing about not answering a question right away, because it gets answered. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'm glad we answered, we responded to what you wanted to say. Right. So, yes.
What about this statement? Some said that you should state your statement as an introduction. So you should state the objective of research.
No, objectives of research, there is a particular, number 8, there's a particular space for objectives of the research.
I mean the core of the research should be stated as
The what?
The core of research.
The core of the research.
Yes.
In one sentence.
Thesis statement.
In one sentence. In one sentence. You have to say, because you said this is the what. So you have to say what you're doing, okay? But in one sentence. Not go on with the 8, because there is a space later where you can do that. One sentence. In general, I think, keep in mind that Dr. Walid said to make it short, to make the introduction short. Don't write a long introduction, because then you tend to be repetitive. A paragraph is good. A long paragraph is good. You don't need more than that, actually, for an introduction. And also keep in mind that you are selling a product, you are advertising in a way, you are using advertising techniques. You want to get the reader interested without actually telling them much about details, without giving details. Avoid details in the introduction. A second element we will tackle is the problem and importance of the research. And here we are, in a way, answering the why. Okay? So in the problem and importance of the research, we are justifying our choice of topic. Why do this? Okay? احنا بدينا القارئ فكرة سريعة، احنا بنعمل ايه في الانترودكشن. We are studying things fall apart in season of migration to the north as counter-colonial discourse. Okay? Why? Why are we choosing these 2 texts to study in this particular manner? Okay, this is one of the things. This has not been said in the introduction. This is the first time you're saying this. Why? And this is what we mean by problem of the research? What, for example, contribution that you are aiming at, and why is there need to study this topic? Why is it important to study this topic? This topic is lying there. Why did you pick it up? And you're studying it. So you're justifying the reason, and you're pointing out the importance, reason and importance of this piece of research. So, for example, so this is basically the why, okay? What, why, and how. So this is basically the why. بس طبعا we will never do the why without the what. يعني you're always referring to your topic, but you're focusing here on why. If we go back to our topic, season of migration to the north and. So we get to our topic, and we want to formulate. What we need to do is formulate the research the problem of the research in a way that would give the reader a sense of where did you get this idea and why do you want to do it. And again, you don't need to go more than one paragraph. There are no details here. لأن خلوا بالكم في element بعد كده اسمه research questions. This is number 9. Research questions هيبقى detailed questions of the research. But the research problem does not ask questions. It tells me about the importance. So if I go to my title, Season of Migration to the North, what can I say in my paragraph that describes the element of the problem and importance of the research, or that responds to the element of problem and importance of the research? What should I say? What can I say? Why is this work? Why am I studying this work? Why is there need to study this work? And what is the importance? What is the contribution? Think about possible ideas. Yes?
You mean trying to explore the relationship between East and West in our modern world? Trying to see how people from this part of the world react when they go abroad.
Okay, so how do you, could you formulate this in a kind of sentence? Because when we come to formulate it in a sentence, we will see where it belongs. How would you start your sentence?
Like I would say, for example, in a world
Yeah,
where a lot of tension.
It's okay.
Exactly. Like in a world full of tensions between East and West, this novel, for example, presents like a kind of view of something, and then I go on and on.
Okay, I don't know why this looks more like an introduction to me.
I'll tell you why. Because what you're doing here is showing the importance of the novel, not your research. And your aim in the proposal is to show why your research is important. You know, yes, things fall apart, and seasonal migration to the north, fantastic novels. And no one's contesting that. Why are you working on it?
So this I think this is a very good idea for an introduction. This the idea of East and West and the culture. But you're not into the topic yet. You're not into the topic. Is a comparative study of the two words as post-colonial counter discourse. Okay. So it's okay طبعا ان احنا بنقول حاجات we are critiquing them. This is part of why we are here, and this crystallizes things more. So who has other suggestions for? وعلى فكرة واحنا بنكتب بنعمل البروسس دي. When you come up with an idea, you subject it to critique. Where does this fit? هتطلع حلوة الجملة قوي بس ناخدها في حتة تانية. Wonderful. Okay. So yes.
Okay, my vision of the problem part or section is I have to include the trigger. is what triggered me to work on these two fantastic novels.
So, give us an example.
I haven't read those novels, so.
Imagine.
Okay, imagine. So it's like post-colonial.
Because your point is right. What triggered me to study?
Yeah, so it's like post-colonial counter-discourse. So everybody is holding them as post-colonial. So I'm trying to refute that, or I'm trying to, yani fulan, they said that these two novels are that way. Everybody is saying that they're that way. So what triggers me is that I think they are not that way. So I'm doing the study in order to reach that point.
So we will take part of your answer, but because you were honest enough to tell us that you have not read the works, so I think there is a little bit of a problem with grasping the topic, but it's okay because you haven't. But one of the things that you said is that how these two works have been dealt with before and why I'm dealing with them in this particular way. For example, I can look and see if these two works have ever been dealt with comparatively before. Maybe not. Maybe nobody studied these particular two works in comparison. That would be the reason why I'm doing it. This is one of the needs why I'm doing it. Maybe, yes, they are seminal works, they are groundbreaking works. One is in English, written in English, one is written in Arabic, but, however, they have not been studied comparatively before. Okay, this is one of the things, and I'm assuming that they haven't, but if they have, khalas, I don't do that, and I try to find something else. Okay, but this is something to look for, and these two things have not been done before. What else?
Well, maybe somebody compared them before, but there was a certain element that wasn't tackled. So maybe I want to deal with this element.
So maybe the focus in the comparative study of the two works has been on the female character or the man-woman relationship, masalan, but I am dealing with it from a different
So I'm
perspective.
basically filling a gap that was missing in the previous research.
That's still possible as part of the research question.
Just
Yeah.
a question, small question. Proving that these works have not been dealt with from this approach before requires critics. So this will come in the literature review, supposedly. Or am I?
Your focus
section will
here
come later.
is not to review the literature. Your focus here is to say that this has not been done before. So you don't need to go into detail of who has done what. You are just giving the conclusion from your literature review. From your literature review...
But the thing is, the literature review will come later, so doesn't this contradict
No, that's okay, because
the order?
if the reader is asking, where did you get this information, they will go to the literature review. Okay, and they will get...
Okay.
I mean, but if you say that something has not been done before, you don't need to
To go...
you